Sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
The Chargers may have played their final game in San Diego, but they have not played their final game with Mike McCoy as head coach. Welcome to the season finale edition of Bolts Brown Bag. In today, Chris Ello. Glad to see you here, Chris, to talk a little Chargers.
I'm still here.
You're still here. We're still here.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. The Chargers may file for relocation to Los Angeles today. They're expected to do so, but we won't know if they get approved for at least 2 weeks. So as of now, they're still the San Diego Chargers, and Mike McCoy is still the head coach of the San Diego Chargers after the team announced this morning that he's coming back despite a 4-12 season and yesterday's 27-20 loss to the Denver Broncos, which to me was just like most of the other losses this season. You play to the fourth quarter, you think for a second, ooh, they might pull this one out. No, not going to pull this one out either. 4-12 is absolutely awful considering where you were the last couple of seasons at 9-7, but he keeps his job.
Yeah, they lost 9 games this year by 1 possession or less. So that's what the Chargers looked at and said, hey, every game was close. Mike McCoy did a great job with all the injuries, kept everybody around. To me, it's just the opposite. If you lose that many games that close, to me, it's a coach that can put you over the top and make the difference. And it's one decision here, one decision there. And as far as I'm concerned, the Chargers most likely are leaving us. They can keep Mike McCoy, whatever they want. As I like to say, it's their funeral.
The Chargers certainly think differently than other teams in the NFL. Maybe that's a good thing. I like to think outside the box. I like to do things differently. But the Philadelphia Eagles had Chip Kelly as their coach. He had 2 seasons of 10-6, and then this year he got fired at 6-9 before the season's even over. The New York Giants won 2 Super Bowls with Tom Coughlin. They went, 6-10 this season. He got let go today. They say it was a mutual decision, but the Giants obviously wanted to move on. Other organizations, other teams don't seem to have as much tolerance for losing seasons as the San Diego Chargers. We saw it with Norv Turner. Now we're seeing it again with Mike McCoy. It's a pattern that's repeating itself.
Yeah, good point, Ben. I mean, if all you expect is to go 7-9, 8-8, or 9-7, and sneak into the playoffs as a wild card and maybe win a wild card game, which Mike McCoy has done, go ahead and keep Mike McCoy. But if in your mind you see yourself standing on a podium someday holding a Vince Lombardi trophy, then you got to move on from Mike McCoy, because I think it's pretty obvious Mike McCoy is never going to get the Chargers to that point. I've always had that feeling when they had Norv Turner, now with Mike McCoy. I try to picture these guys at the top of their sport, at the pinnacle of their sport, holding the trophy with all the confetti raining down and all of that. I don't see that ever happening with Mike McCoy. Do I see maybe him going 9-7 next year and they rebound and get into the playoffs? Good for them, but I think they should be shooting for more.
If you're looking for a reason as to why the Chargers kept Mike McCoy, you're not going to get a lot, at least right now, out of the Chargers front office. John Spanos, the team's president, released a letter today that he posted on the Chargers website, and we have a little video of what it says, but look how short it is. Basically, it says nothing other than the fact that the Chargers have full confidence in the leadership of Tom Telesco and Mike McCoy, and they think that those guys can fix it. Doesn't really address what I think have been the same issues with Mike McCoy since his very first season as the head coach of the Chargers, and that is game management decisions, not aggressive enough, going for it on 4th down, making the kind of decisions that can really, change the outcome of a ball game. Conservative punting decisions that he continues to make, we see over and over again, and he has not changed. He's been the same coach. I was hoping to see a little growth out of Mike McCoy, from his first to his second season as a rookie head coach developing, yet I haven't seen any development. He seems like the same coach, the same guy as the very first day he stepped into the door at Chargers Park.
You were hoping that he would listen to all of your criticism over the last 3 years and actually try to do something about being criticized by you. I'm in the same camp as you are, Ben. I mean, we don't always agree on everything, but we agree on this. And to me, Mike McCoy is a solid NFL coach, but is he somebody that can take you beyond 9-7, 10-6? Can he win a division? Can he be a 13-3 head coach? Can he really make that? I mean, look, 9 games decided by 1 possession or less this year. Everybody looks at Mike McCoy and says, that's great. No, that's not great. That means your coach, you probably got out-coached by one play here, one decision there, and that's what cost you these football games by one possession. So I'm disappointed in what the Chargers are doing here, but I think we're all pretty disappointed in everything that's happening with the Chargers right now, and in a lot of ways, this decision doesn't bother me. Now, the other way of looking at this is, and you and I talked about this yesterday on our radio show, Mike McCoy really going to be the face of your franchise if you move up to Los Angeles? I mean, you're going to stick him in front of the LA media in the big, huge market? I mean, he can barely handle the San Diego media, walked out of a press conference earlier this year. Mike, if you can't handle the San Diego media, you're going to be in a whole heck of a lot of trouble trying to deal with Los Angeles. That's a big city up there, and you're going to have to be competing with the Lakers and the Dodgers and USC and UCLA and everything else that's going on up there, and the other football team that probably be in Los Angeles. And Mike McCoy, who is kind of shrinks away from the media, that's not the person I want leading my charge if I go into a new city.
All right, Chris, this is an interactive show. We like to get the participation of the viewers out there online. You can tweet us, use the hashtag #BoltsBrownBag. We'll answer questions, read your comments as we go through. We also have a poll question up on the website if you'd like to chime in on it right now. And basically it says, with Mike McCoy coming back, the Chargers have indicated there's going to be changes in Mike McCoy's coaching staff. So the first two people you always look at when they hint about changes to the coaching staff are the coordinators. So we've asked you on the poll question, do you think the Chargers should fire A, offensive coordinator Frank Reich, B, defensive coordinator John Pagano, C, both, or D, neither? And those are your four choices. Let's talk
How about A and C?
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I have an opinion on this. And John Pagano has been a little hit or miss as a defensive coordinator now, I believe 3 seasons in the job. But you can't argue with the way the Chargers defense finished the season, playing about as strong as we saw them over the last 6 weeks. They kept some pretty good teams, off the scoreboard or minimal points. We saw 5 turnovers forced yesterday. Normally, you have an offense, they're going to cash in 5 turnovers. Chargers are going to score 30, 40 points. They're going to win that game easily. Unfortunately, they couldn't cash in on all those turnovers yesterday. They still ended up losing the game. But I like what I saw from John Pagano, and I know he's well-liked in that building. He's been with the organization, I think, for 14 years now. Do you think they're going to get rid of him, or do you think they're going to pin it more on the offense and the offensive coordinator, Frank Reich?
I wouldn't get rid of John Pagano. Here's the only mistake John Pagano made. His defense played so well yesterday in the first half that he helped bring Peyton Manning back to life. That may be a mistake for the San Diego Chargers. I mean, let's think about this. Peyton Manning was maybe 1 or 2 games away from never getting back on the field again for the Denver Broncos, and perhaps never getting back on the field again ever as an NFL quarterback. But you know what? The Chargers flummoxed Brock Osweiler so much yesterday in that first half of that game, picked him off twice, couple of lucky tips, I understand, but enough to where Denver struggled, to where the point was Gary Kubiak said to Peyton Manning at halftime, hey, I may have to go with you in the second half. And now Peyton Manning's back to life. And now Denver, that's his team again. He's going to take them into the playoffs. Who knows, Peyton Manning may even have another year or 2 left. You were this close to having Peyton Manning out of football. Now he's back. That was the only mistake John Pagano made. So, yes, to answer your question, I would look at the offensive side of the ball if I was going to make a change.
All right, Deborah with Bolts Blitz chimes in. Reich is the first that needs to go ASAP. Strength and conditioning coaches need to go, and I think that's a reference to all the injuries that they've suffered. But I tend to agree with you, and I tend to agree with Deborah. And I'm not going to say that Frank Reich was the problem with the Chargers this season, because I think that would be very unfair. But there's a guy available out there that I think could come in and help the Chargers right away. We saw it work in Mike McCoy's first season as head coach. Ken Wisenhunt as offensive coordinator. He spent an ill-fated season and a half as head coach of the Tennessee Titans, got fired, but he's out there. I think the Chargers would be wise to aggressively try to get Ken Wisenhunt back and recreate what worked really well in the first season, got him to the playoffs, got him to a playoff win. And if you're keeping Mike McCoy, let's reunite him with Ken Wisenhunt again as offensive coordinator.
That's fine. I don't really, to me, I'm not even looking at the coaching staff. They're going to make whatever changes they make because they have to pin this on somebody, and they're not going to pin it on themselves. I mean, if Tom Telesco really, to me, had any guts, he'd stand up and say, hey, this season was on me. This was my fault, man. I did not put together a roster that was deep enough to compete at the National Football League level. The New England Patriots had 500 injuries this year. They still won 12 games. The Denver Broncos lost Manning and so many other players. They still won 12 games. Every team in the NFL loses tons of players. That's the nature of the sport. You've got to have depth at those positions and be able to replace players that go down with good players, not just guys that are holding a spot. I think Tom Telesco is the guy who did a terrible job this year. It doesn't mean he's going to do a terrible job next year, but I thought this was on him this season. They can go ahead and fire whatever coaches they want to. The bottom line is they're going to have better players. You can bring Ken Wisenhunt back. You can bring Vince Lombardi back from the dead. Not going to matter if you don't have enough players to get through a season next year.
Is that an option?
It's an option.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, there's a lot Walking Dead. There's all those shows on right now.
If you move to LA, then there's an option.
They can probably get him there. Mike Royce tweets in that Reich is likely to be let go. Which coaches do you think would be prime offensive coordinator candidates that won't get head coaching jobs? Well, I kind of addressed that earlier with Wisenhunt. I don't think he's getting another shot as a head coach, especially this season, after how badly it went with the Tennessee Titans. They're getting the first pick in the draft after having the second pick last season. So, again, I think he fits there and would be available to the Chargers. Let's talk about excuses a little bit, because Mike McCoy met with the media this morning after it was announced that he was going to be back and faced, the questions about whether he deserved to be back, his feelings about this whole process, and we have a little bit for you here, his reaction to returning for another season as head coach of the Chargers.
The situation that's come out, I'm the head football coach here, so I'm never really going to ever get into that about the length of my contract, all this and that, but we've discussed, and I'm the head football coach, so very excited for the opportunity to be back this year, and I'm really excited with who's here and the players we have moving forward, and I think everybody understands, from throughout the year what we need to improve. So I'm energized and excited, ready to go, and very thankful for the opportunity to be back.
As usual, not saying a whole lot there. That he's excited to be back as head coach of the Chargers. He's going to continue to.
You expected insight from him?
It's the same as always. He's going to, they're going to dig in their heels. They're going to work this offseason toward getting the team better. The exact same thing he says between every loss. We just got to get back and work harder. Well, you know what? Working harder, I believe that he works hard. I believe that he gets his coaches to work hard.
But doesn't every team in the NFL work hard?
They do. They need to work smarter.
Yeah.
And they're not working smart enough. Don't work harder, Mike. Work smarter.
This whole notion that we're going to outwork other teams in the NFL is ridiculous. I mean, every single coach in the National Football League stays at the facility until 4 a.m. and goes over film and sleeps in sleeping bags in the equipment room. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the nature of this business. Every team is working hard. You got to, like you said, work smarter, and you have to have better players to make it work. And I just think Tom Telesco's got to put together a roster, rehaul this entire thing, overhaul it, put together a roster that can handle some injuries, because you're not making it through an NFL season anymore without 3 or 4 guys going down. And I appreciate the fact that you lost Keenan Allen and this guy and Stevie Johnson and this guy and that guy. But almost every team in the NFL made it through this season with a bunch of injuries. Some of them won 12 games.
Absolutely. Patriots had a ton of injuries. Ended up fine. The Broncos lost Peyton Manning for half the season.
Yeah.
They got the number 1 seed in the AFC. Injuries certainly are an explanation, but you can't make that as the excuse as to why you're keeping your head coach.
If that's what you make as your excuse, then you're fooling yourself.
All right, you talked about needing more players. Armin tweets in, is Joey Bosa the number 1 priority the Chargers should be looking at with their 3rd pick? The Chargers do have the ability to add some talent. Getting the 3rd pick in the draft is going to mean a good player is available there, or you can go the other route and you can try to trade down and add multiple picks out of the 3rd slot to try to address many holes. A defensive end, though, from a quality program like Ohio State, is certainly something I think the Chargers could use. So I would be, very surprised if they didn't strongly consider taking Joey Bosa from the Buckeyes with that 3rd selection.
Don't know. I mean, I know Joey Bosa is a good college football player. I know he got suspended from the final game of his career because he had a targeting penalty. I don't think that carries over to the NFL, so he wouldn't have to sit out the first game. But do I know that Joey Bosa is going to come to San Diego if you draft him? and work harder than anybody on the field and improve himself and become a great NFL player. I have no idea. You have no idea. They have no idea. Sounds pretty good on paper. I'm always inclined to move down a little bit if I can do that when I've got the number 3 pick. I'd rather get 2 or 3 guys. I mean, the Chargers are way more than 1 player away from contention next year. I'm the kind of guy that says if I can find a way to get 3 or 4 players instead of just 1 guy, I have a better chance of finding 2 or 3 good players if I draft 6 than I do if I draft 2 or 3. That's my thinking.
All right, Chris, update on the poll question. 100% of respondents so far think that Frank Reich should be fired. Now, 55% say both, and 45% say just Reich. But 100% say Reich should be fired, which I guess is good because Michael Gelkin from the UT just tweeted that Frank Reich is out as offensive coordinator as the Chargers. So the power of the Bolts Brown Bag poll, that was the fastest we've ever seen response to the Bolts Brown Bag poll. So the Chargers will need a new offensive coordinator.
Can we do another poll now as to whether or not they should really keep Mike McCoy?
A stronger poll?
Maybe? A stronger poll. Should they really keep
All right, speaking of keeping Mike McCoy, though, Pro Football Talk also tweeted that there was some speculation, and I believe they even mentioned it last night on the Sunday night game, that Mike McCoy is going to be kept today, but if the Chargers get approved to move to Los Angeles, they may change their mind and fire him in a couple of weeks. Now, Mike Florio has gone back on that today and said, no, Mike McCoy will be the head coach whether the Chargers are in San Diego or whether they're playing in Los Angeles next season. Now, Mike McCoy did say he talked to his players this morning in their final meeting about the possibility of moving to Los Angeles. Let's hear what he had to say about that.
It's all been speculation up to this point in time. It's getting close to that day. So we mentioned to the players today in the exit meeting, what possibly could happen, but we'll wait and see. And we'll be, we'll be very informative with the players of what's going on in the future, and we'll wait and see what happens. But we'll give them all the information they need to know as time goes along.
All right, so clearly he's laying the groundwork and prepping the team to be ready for a possible move. Said he still doesn't know whether it's a certainty, that we won't know for a couple of weeks until the owners meet.
He doesn't know anything.
He really doesn't know anything.
What does he do when he goes into work every day? Does he just not pay attention to anybody? Does nobody talk to Mike McCoy? Does nobody ever give him any information of any kind? Does he have any decision-making power on anything? Because he doesn't know anything. It's absolutely remarkable.
But it's the first time he's really addressed it at all. I mean, He did not want to talk about it one lick during the season.
No, because he told us before the season that this was not going to be something that was going to cause the Chargers any problems. It was right. They were going to get the potential that they might move was not going to be a distraction. And guess what? It was a distraction the entire year. I'm sorry. Whether you addressed it or not or talked about it or not, it was a distraction.
It's hard to disagree. The other two teams rumored to move to L.A. fared a little better than the Chargers. I think 7-9 and 7-9, 6-10.
They might have both gone 7-9.
Rams and Raiders both 7-9. No one's going to the playoffs though. No. So I guess they can all focus on their potential move over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it has to be a distraction. And I'll tell you another thing. If they come back, if for some reason they get a stay of execution or something and stay in San Diego for another season, or they give them another season to try and work something out, which is something we've talked about. And I think we're kind of, begging, we're hoping maybe that somehow that happens. But if they stayed in San Diego, Mike McCoy will look at us again next year and say, you know what? The potential of us moving is not going to be a distraction. I know that's it. I mean, he'd say it for him right now. I mean, he's going to always believe that. And if he goes to Los Angeles, he'll say that being in a new city, that's no distraction. You have to deal with all of these things. They're all out there. People are aware of them. I mean, I think it's a big mistake to not talk about stuff like that.
All right, before we get to our season results for our Pick'em contest, wanted to give out the final Bolts Brown Bagger game. Bolts Brown Bagger of the Game award, and it was pretty obvious yesterday. I thought Steve Williams, the cornerback who forced basically 3 turnovers. He had a fumble recovery, an interception, and then forced a fumble with a sack.
I thought you were going to go with anybody named Williams
in the first half. Well, Tyrell Williams was a good choice
too.
Yeah,
come on, the kid his first catch of his life is an 80-yard touchdown.
The Williams family.
The Williams
family. So congratulations to Steve Williams, the last Bolts Brown Bagger of the Game for the season. All right, we all season long have been having our pick'em contest both here on Bolts Brown Bag and our Radio Red Zone show.
I just want to say before we show the final results that because it's your show and both John Gennaro and I look up to you and we appreciate you and respect you very much. Just a little before you show the final results, John Gennaro and I got together before the year and said, let's just make sure we tie, and then we'll just go ahead and let Ben win by a few points.
You were going easy on me. Is
right.
that what it was?
All right. And we said, well, we wanted to tie because we didn't want to make one of us look smarter than the other, but we wanted to make you look the smartest.
All right. I had a 3-point lead going into the final week.
How did it turn out?
I finished with a 5-point lead over both of you.
And we tied.
You tied. Second place. Yeah, 53 points for both of you. You had your upset pick. The Bills came through for you, 4 points, but you didn't get the Packers. I got my 2 and 3 point picks, the Texans and the Saints.
Yeah, you actually
wrapped it up
gained a
for the
little
season.
ground.
So, so
good for you.
It was good competition all year
You were the
long.
champion guy this year. John, I think, had the lead with a few weeks to go and kind of faded down the stretch. But I think I was third the entire year. I sat there in the cellar all year and watched you guys fight it out. But,
all right,
it was fun. Do you want us to pick the playoff games?
We can do a separate game. We'll figure it out.
All right, we'll do something.
We'll figure something. We just say it on Twitter, social media picking.
Well, you haven't thought about the playoff games coming up
I
next
haven't
weekend?
yet. I'm all about the Chargers. The Bolts aren't in the. This is Bolts Brown Bag, and the last time I checked, the Bolts are not in the playoffs this year.
I know. So I've already moved on from the Bolts, and I'm looking forward to the playoffs.
All right. Is it time to bring in Ferris for the 3 questions? I think we're getting near that time for our 3 questions with our web editor, Ferris Tanios. And I'm sure you're disappointed that John Gennaro's not here, so you can't bug him about your Cincinnati Bengals getting the, into the playoffs. Although not a first-round bye, so I'm sure you're a little nervous about that.
Yeah, I needed a little help from the Chargers. That didn't come.
That didn't happen.
No. So actually, speaking of the Bengals, my first question: how will the Steelers knock A.J. McCarron out on the opening drive Saturday? Will they tear his ACL, concuss him, break his wrist, or just have James Harrison snap him in half?
It's funny.
Are you referring to the fact that they knocked out Carson Palmer in the first drive last time the Bengals and Steelers
10 years
met
ago.
in the playoffs 10 years ago?
And then a few weeks ago, they broke Andy Dalton's thumb.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to try and hurt a McCarron.
They want him in.
They want him in, yeah. I don't think they're going to make
No,
any
A.J.
mistakes.
McCarron's looked pretty good. In fact, I'm sure you would have rather, as a Bengals fan, seen the Jets coming in as opposed to the Steelers. But I'll say this. Patriots looked terrible yesterday. Last 2 weeks, they've looked terrible. The Broncos have got to be the iffiest 1 seed I've ever seen in the AFC playoffs. The Houston Texans, the Kansas City Chiefs are red hot, but they wouldn't have to face them
haven't
until
won a playoff
at least the
game
AFC Championship,
since
and they only
Joe
beat I think
Montana.
1 team with a winning record on their 10-game winning streak. If A.J. McCarron can play well, the Bengals actually could get through the AFC playoffs.
They can't.
No?
No, and he knows it too.
All right.
I mean, he knows that they're not going to beat the Steelers.
They're not a smart team. That's their problem. They're not very
Well,
smart, and they don't have a very smart
Welcome
coach.
to the club.
Yeah, it's a good team, but not a smart team. And I'll just say this: when I look at playoff games, I look at one position, and that's quarterback. And when I see a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback on one side for Pittsburgh and a rookie playing in his first playoff game ever for Cincinnati, I'm going to lean to Pittsburgh. Sorry.
Okay. Question number 2.
Okay, second question. So you had an interesting situation on Sunday Night Football last night. Vikings and Packers, both of them, by winning, would have to face the Seahawks. So wouldn't you want to sit your starters as opposed to getting home field
You
advantage
think that both
in the
teams
first
should
round?
have tried to lose that game?
Yeah.
They tried to lose that game.
Well-
the way Aaron Rodgers played, maybe the Packers were trying to
Yeah,
lose
I was
that
a little
game.
suspicious there, but I will say this. I think it was important for the Vikings to win that division, get that home playoff game. They may lose in the first round either way. You get a home playoff game, it's a building block for next season. The Vikings were never going to win the Super Bowl this year. The Packers with Aaron Rodgers probably think they have a shot, and I think they're taking the maybe easier route by getting to play Washington in the first round. But I'm going to make my bold prediction here. Packers are losing to Washington in the first round.
Wow.
Packers have played some really bad football the last month and a half.
And Kirk Cousins
What
has
is-
been terrific over the last month and a half of the season.
If they win that game, what does Kirk Cousins yell at the press conference?
What?
What does he scream
What
as
does
he's
he-
walking out?
I'll tell you one thing. We said this yesterday. Jay Gruden, is the winner of the lottery. He taking Robert Griffin III out at the beginning of the season and going with Kirk Cousins. I don't think anybody remembers that decision now, but that was turned out to be a great decision for Washington.
All right, question number 3.
Third question, you guys touched on this. I actually think the Chiefs are going to win the AFC. So tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, they haven't. Well, I'm going to tell you, first of all, they haven't won a playoff game since Joe Montana was their quarterback in 1993.
Now he's wearing cargo pants with change in them to buy paper pizza.
That worries me a little bit. And Andy Reid, now he did get to one Super Bowl with the Eagles, so it's not impossible that he could get there. But to me, Andy Reid is much too conservative when it comes to playoff time to get his team over the hump.
This close to being Marty Schottenheimer in the playoffs.
He's a very solid guy that can win in the regular season. I've never been a fan of him coaching in the playoffs. I like Alex Smith to win a playoff game. It's finally time for him to break through and win a playoff game. But if Kansas City wins, chances are they're going to run into New England in the next round, and they're just not good enough to beat New England.
I just don't think. I mean, I'm not taking anything away. 10-game winning streak they're the hottest team going into the playoffs. But
you said it. They didn't beat anybody
They
good.
didn't beat anybody. They beat the Broncos once in that streak, and the Broncos with Osweiler figuring it out. I mean, they played a lot of teams with injuries. They won games that they should have won. All of a sudden, they're going to be playing tougher games. They may get past the Texans in the first round, but I wouldn't be stunned if the winning streak comes to an end.
Does he get to come back, though, and tell I told you so if the Chiefs make the Super Bowl?
I have to work with him, so.
It is
You
going to
don't
be,
have to hear it, I will.
You know, it is going to be Super Bowl 50, right? It is going to be Super Bowl 50. So what better way to celebrate than with a rematch of Super Bowl 1, which was the Chiefs against the Green Bay Packers?
That would be
pretty
possible,
interesting.
at least.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both in the
All right.
playoffs.
Who are your picks?
Well, that's what I was
Here,
just going to
who's your
get
Super Bowl
to.
picks?
You want to stay for it, or you want to go?
I'll stay.
All right, I was going to get to that. We need to do some playoff picks. Now that we know the seeds,
Okay.
we know the matchups, we know how teams are playing heading into the postseason.
Right.
How is it shaping up in your mind?
All right, the first thing I have to look at is this weekend, and I already mentioned that I always like a veteran playoff quarterback over a quarterback playing in his first ever playoff game. That is the situation for all 4 playoff games this weekend. Aaron Rodgers against Teddy Bridgewater, his first game. We already talked about the Chiefs and the Texans.
Aaron Rodgers against Kirk Cousins, yeah.
Aaron Rodgers against
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins, thank you. Russell Wilson against Teddy Bridgewater. And then in the AFC, it's the same story. Veteran quarterbacks who have been in the playoffs against first-timers. The only problem is every one of those veteran quarterbacks is on the road. So am I going to pick the road team to win every single wild card playoff game this week? I probably am. Because I always
And that
go with-
won't happen.
And you know that it's never happened before.
Yeah.
You know a home team's going to win somewhere. I just don't know which one, so I'll go ahead and pick against all of them this week. And then moving on, I think that I think Pittsburgh is a better team than Denver, and they would match up there. I like Pittsburgh, New England for the AFC Championship. I like the top 2 seeds in the NFC, Carolina and Arizona.
All right, I like Bengals, Chiefs, Vikings, and Redskins in the wild card round. Now, you've had every year for the last 10 years, at least one of the top 2 buys is lost.
That's
in
right.
one of the 2 conferences. Someone has had the playoff pratfall in the division round. So if I'm going to pick the one team that goes out in the first round of the playoffs,
You're going to agree with me and say Denver.
they get the 1 seed.
Now, keep in mind, if Seattle does win, they would play Carolina.
They'd be playing Kansas City in my scenario, though, if the Bengals
Right.
win.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to lose at home to Kansas City, so I don't think it's going to be Denver. I think that the team that loses in the first round is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. Wow, to the Seattle Seahawks? They just annihilated them yesterday. I think that could happen. I think the Seahawks win, upset the Cardinals, and we'll play the Panthers in the NFC Championship.
Okay.
And we'll get the Patriots and Broncos in the AFC Championship.
Patriots and Broncos again. All right. I like New England and Arizona in the Super Bowl.
All right, Arizona's
You
out.
can't agree with me because you
Arizona's
knocked out
now.
Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona's out now. So I'm going to take Seattle back for a 3rd straight year, and they're going to take on New England. It's a rematch.
Rematch of last
year's
year
Super.
for you.
Yeah.
You're basing everything on the fact that Seattle crushed Arizona
am.
in the final game of the regular season yesterday.
They've looked good for a good 2 months.
They didn't look too
now.
good 2 weeks ago.
They didn't, but Russell Wilson's been solid. So,
Okay.
all right. So, and I'll take Seattle this time in the rematch.
All right.
That was kind of an impromptu run through.
Yeah, the entire playoff.
Just had
That's
to go
hard
through
to
the whole
do,
thing,
but,
yeah.
Arizona, New England. I'm going to root for Arizona, so I'll take
All
Arizona.
right. Ferris, thanks for your contributions all season.
Good stuff,
Appreciate it.
Ferris. Funny questions.
All right, a couple more tweets in here. Big White Kahuna. Not that I don't agree with this, but the crippling O-line, what could anyone do? We got a couple of tweets about the injuries, and we talked a little bit about it. Those were, if there's one area that I could say, yeah, I understand, you can't do much with it. when you're down to they were down to 4 offensive linemen at one point yesterday. I think they only had 5 games all season where they finished with the same offensive lineman.
Weren't they thinking about bringing Mike Cyphers in to play left tackle yesterday?
They might have.
Yeah,
they might have. It was pretty bad. And
when you have that many injuries, it's hard. It is very difficult to tell what your team could have been. But my problem is, and I think as we said, the injuries are a fair excuse for the Chargers this year. But my problem is when they've been healthier and they haven't had the injuries, the best that Mike McCoy's been able to come up with is 9-7. So there's nothing to lead me to believe that if they're healthier next year, you're going to come up with anything better than that.
Ultimately, I think if you want a path for the Chargers to bounce back, and Philip Rivers pointed out the last time the Chargers went 4-12, you know what their record was the next season? 12-4. Yeah. 2003 to 2004. It can happen. I think the path for the Chargers to do that or do something close to that, you got to fix the offensive line. Whether that means getting healthy, bringing in different players, fix the offensive line. I think the defense, actually, with some of these, with Denzel Perriman and Jason Verrett, I think they've got a nucleus of a pretty decent defense. So if you can fix the offensive line, I say bring back Ken Whisenhunt, an offensive coordinator, put some points on the board. You could see the Chargers be right back in the mix next year in the AFC West.
All right, well, you're going to have a new offensive coordinator. We know that.
Yep. Right? Poll, by the way, 100% for Reich, 60% say Pagano as well. But the report is from Michael Gelkin of the Union Tribune that Frank Reich out as offensive coordinator of the Chargers.
Frank Reich would have been a great offensive coordinator if his team, if the Chargers only could have fallen behind by 35 points in every game. Because you know that he engineered the greatest comeback in NFL history.
Buffalo Bills, Houston Oilers.
And he also engineered the greatest comeback in college football history when he was at Maryland. They fell behind Miami of Florida by 35 points and came back and won.
Almost broken in the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, I know.
That was a weird 31-0 TCU. That was crazy. Well, Chris, thanks for stopping by. I know you did a few shows this season. Appreciate it. I got to thank everyone else who helped on the show this year as well. Of course, John Gennaro, not here today, but sat in the co-host chair many times throughout the year. Everyone in the back, Steve Liu, Robert Buchanan. Today we got Jose, Eddie working on the inside because it was raining outside. Shursty, Luke Smith, Dennis. We got a lot of people who made this show happen. I want to thank everyone.
I thought you did it all by yourself.
I don't. And want to thank all of you out there for taking time during your lunches on Mondays to stick around, talk a little Chargers, no matter how infuriating this team has been, no matter how tired you probably are of talking about the Chargers. You made it a point to join us a bunch, and I do really appreciate that. And hopefully, crossing our fingers, we'll be back for another season of Bolts Brown Bag next year about the San Diego Chargers staying in San Diego.
Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we don't have to change the name of the show to Bolted Brown Bag.
Very nice. All right, for Chris Ello, I'm Ben Higgins. Thanks for joining us.
I know I
Bolts Brown
Bag
better,
but you know what I mean.
Have a very happy 2016.